well. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meetup where Sif la Cour will share her experiences with hybrid user testing and how you sometimes need to bend the textbook rules for user testing when you go out into the real world. I'm Tina Øverl, and I'm going to be your host this morning. And as always, we're so happy to see so many people joining online, even though it's some of you are also from the US and from Australia. So happy to see you here as well. So, and good morning to you, Sif, as well. It's great to see you, as always. Sif is a UX lead at ZeroNorth and specializes in UX research and design thinking. And she's very passionate about ethics in the UX process and also very serious about representing the users in everything she does. So the agenda for today is that when I'm done with all the practicalities, Sif will start her talk. You can ask questions in the QA sections during the talk, but we will have some time at the end of the talk to go through some of your questions. We are recording everything and we will share the recording during the next week. So if you need to jump out of the meeting because you have some other things to do, don't worry, you will receive the recording afterwards. And see if I'm not sure, are you going to share your slides as well?
Yeah, sure, I can share my slides.
That sounds great. That sounds great. For those of you who don't know Preely is a self-service platform for unmoderated remote user testing, and we also have the opportunity of hosting your test panel on the platform as well. So if there is some stuff that you need to, or you want to have an introduction to the platform or maybe a demo, please reach out and then we'll see what we can do and if we can support you in your work. I think that was it. Sif, I think just take it away. I'm looking forward to your talk.
Yeah, thank you. So before putting on the slides, maybe I should just put a few more words to me and who I am. First of all, I think it's so weird to run a session like this, and I can't see any of you. I can't see your reactions, so I can't really adapt my communication. So, but hopefully all goes well. So what I think you need to know about me is that I've been around. I've been a consultant on my own. I've been a consultant in an agency. I've worked across platforms covering mobile, desktop, and browser. I've covered the B2C and the B2B segments, currently in the B2B segment. I've been in various roles spanning from UX designer to UX UI chapter lead to UX lead. So I've seen my fair share, and I've been working with both the day-to-day of being a UXer and on the strategic level, and also coaching others within the field. So that's just a little bit about me. So now I have to get this technical stuff to work. Let's see. And Tina, feel free to jump in at any time, right? So I don't feel all alone and think that everybody dropped out and I'm just talking to myself here.
I know the feeling. I'll drop in once in a while just to let you know that we're still
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so hybrid user testing and UX processes. And do I really have to introduce myself? I don't anymore because I already did that. So on to the interesting part, which is how to build products that people love. And I'm sorry for not like looking straight in the camera. I have to look at my notes. Otherwise, I'll just go wild on some theme that we didn't plan I was going to talk about. So I have to keep sort of like look at my notes to see where I'm at and what the points are I want to make today. So how to build products that people love. I don't know, like, am I really supposed to answer that question? Who wrote that shit anyways? I guess I shouldn't throw Tina under the bus here. So I guess I should be honest and say that I'm the one who wrote that. And I guess that the only right answer to that one is that building product that people love is not something that you are going to do on your own as a UXer. I expect most of you listening in today are UXers. So when I do say you, I talk about UX designers. It's not something you're going to do on your own. That's definitely a team effort, and it's right from sales to the development team to the support team. And you can go ahead and include management and finance in there too, as even backstage roles and processes, they shape the experience of the product. So again, you're not going to do this on your own as a UXer, but I hope I'm guessing that you do have some pretty amazing superpowers that will increase the likelihood of your company succeeding in building products that people love. And that is what we're going to talk about today, those superpowers and what you can do to increase this likelihood of success. So, now you thought I was done talking about myself, but actually I'm not. So I'm an academic. I am. I have a Master of Science. Sounds cool, right? From the IT University in Copenhagen. But you know what? I really, really, really hate people telling me that I'm an academic. I don't feel like an academic, or at least I don't feel like what I think of an academic being. I'm a pragmatic person. I have a backpack full of methods, and I can pick pieces from those methods and apply them to the situation at hand and to get the insights that I need. And so that didn't come out of nothing, right? It came from years of just trying stuff out and not being afraid of coming up short and just going full speed ahead. But I have to admit that fresh out of school, I was an academic, or again, what I think of an academic being. Textbooks, rules, hierarchy, all or nothing kind of thing here. And so, like, if you can't, when I say all or nothing, what I think of is like, if you read about a method or a process and the textbook says, okay, so you have to set aside this amount of days, and if that's not possible, then just don't do it, right? Because the data you produce, it won't be relevant. And you know what I quickly realized when I got out in the real world, when I got out of uni, I realized that companies, they're definitely not academic, right? They don't like process and methods just because some book says that that's how you get your insights. Companies, they like data that they can use to make good decisions out of. And they like to get that data really fast. Like they wanted that data yesterday, right? They don't want it tomorrow or the day after. It should have been there now. So now you know, from my point of view, what academics they like. They like textbook rules. Now you know what companies like. They like fast and reliable answers. And now we're going to talk some more about me, because now I'm going to tell you what I like. And what I like is people and their problems. I love being invited into someone else's world, really understand what's hurting them. So work-wise, of course, it's not like I'm a psychologist or anything like that. But I guess to be a good UXer, at least from my point of view, you gotta sort of like to talk to people and really truly understand their problems, and also the setting around their problems, not just like looking at it in its own little silo there, and then to come up with some solutions on how to solve those problems. So that's what I like. And I mean, we can talk some more about this, what it means to be a UXer or be a good UXer even. And I think that, again, I think many of you watching today are UXers. And I bet that if Tina asked all of us, we would all have slightly different definitions of what a good UXer is. And that's all good. Besides, it's a broad field, right? So besides from those companies looking to employ a UXer, where it's like what they want is really to have a person sitting there trying to do a product designer's job while thinking about the user, not really interacting with them. And they don't get, these companies, hiring managers, they don't get to define UX in my world. But coming back to this, what my idea of a good UXer is, it's someone who falls in love with the user and their problems. And fall so much in love with them that this UXer is willing to do basically whatever they can to produce and share some insights about the user and share those with the company, that company they work in, so that every single role in the company will keep in mind the user perspective. You can't work in your own little black box. You can't keep your insights to yourself. That's your responsibility as a UXer, to build empathy for the user in the company. And that's what I'm talking about. Like we cannot build lovable products on our own and without empathy. I clicked a bit too soon there, I see. Okay, so I saw this tweet a while back, and I wanted to share. I took a screenshot of it, and I wanted to share it here, but I take so many screenshots that I couldn't find it. So you'll just have to trust me here. It's not something that I made up. It was this smart lady, or at least I think she was smart, because it made sense to me what she was saying. That she said that if there is no research, then there is no empathy. And for me, that's a really central part of this being a UXer and being a good UXer, to build empathy. So to understand and use that understanding to be a part of an organization that builds amazing product. So stuff that actually makes a big difference for someone in their daily lives. So building this empathy through research, and sharing those insights with the company. I think that's the greatest responsibility that we have as UXers. So, I started a new job very recently, in the beginning of March, actually. And, it's always, for me at least, it's always crazy to change your job and getting to a new company and yeah. Anyways, ZeroNorth is the company that I'm working at now. And it sounds pretty cool, right? I think it's a pretty cool name. And the product is pretty cool too. I'm not going to go all nerdy on you with the details. I know that's not what you came here for. But basically, we build product that's going to change the shipping industry. And that sounds very grand, but I'm not kidding, and I believe in this. So we're building a product that in 2021, and that's still in its MVP phase, it reduced CO2 in shipping by so much that it would be the same as removing 47,000, that's a big number, right? 47,000 cars from the face of the earth. So I think that's pretty cool. And I don't know if you can imagine getting up to building product like that in the morning. That's it's pretty awesome. Yeah. Okay. So anywho's, what I want to do to get a bit more practical, hands-on on the topic for today, is that I want to walk you through what I've been doing since I started at ZeroNorth. And I promise you that I've been super busy, and I definitely have not had the time to do a textbook process. So I felt the heat myself here. And my first task was to do my part of a big product discovery on this big addition to a service. And internally, there was there was already a pretty good idea about how to crack this nut. A lot of hypothesis from the divergent discovery phase. So the first part of the diamond, I guess you can recognize double diamond here, right? Not going to talk about that. But there was a lot of hypothesis already. So I sat down with the product crew lead, and I had him walk me through it to sort of get me up to speed, right? And at this point, we were at the converging state. So pretty sure what the problem was. And we just needed to it's not just, right? We needed to find the right solution and then to test that out to sort of see if what we came up with was good. So together we made a prototype based on these hypotheses. And now we had something to show for, right? Now we had an artifact. And in some companies, and unfortunately still in a lot of companies, right? I think it's embarrassing. But in a lot of companies, this would actually mean something to start writing code for. So going directly from design to writing code, not involving the user there. But I guess, I hope that it's a well-known fact by now that testing the user experience after deployment, that's a pretty costly thing to do. It's costly for your company's budget, and it's costly for your users. And when something's costly for your users, it's costly for your budget too. So that's sort of just like an evil circle. And did you know that whenever a customer has a bad experience, a negative experience, it requires around 12 positive experience to sort of wipe out that negative experience. So again, it's a whole lot cheaper, not just financially, to test well on the drawing board. And your customers, they will absolutely love you for bringing them into the machine room. Yeah. Okay. Back to the story, I guess. So, this is the phase we were in. Whoops, here we are. Getting internal and external feedback that can provide a lot of value, but that value is very closely connected to your preparation for running these sessions and how you ask for feedback. So picking your methods, what method to use, how to ask for feedback, how to do that. In my experience, what a lot of companies would do at this stage is that they would do a show and tell of the prototype with some stakeholders, maybe customers if you're lucky, you never really know. And just to give you some food for thought, what do you think the difference is between giving a show and tell and to ask for feedback after your show and tell versus placing the prototype in the hands of the users and asking them to walk you through it, so have them explain it to you? So I'm just gonna let that question sit there for a while. I'm gonna answer what I think in a minute, and in the meantime, there is something I stumbled across this this term not long ago, voodoo usability. I don't know if you heard about it. I never heard about it before, but I think it sounds super cool. But it's actually not. It's basically studying opinion over use. So I know I said before that I'm not an academic, or I don't want to like feel academic. And here I am. What I'm referring to, this voodoo usability. It's actually an article by Jakob Nielsen from 1999, and now I feel super old. But it's still true though, like, right? It is. What I think is that if you can only use one method, it has to be task-based testing. And now I don't know if all of you know what task-based testing is. So I'm just gonna explain it real brief. It basically means that you provide the user with a real life context and a task to solve. So this context, it could be that you're in a hurry because you're late for Granny's birthday, and you bought your first Reisekort. And now, Tini, you said before that we have some people from the States and Australia here. So Reisekort is basically just your like your ticket to check into the metro, right? Like a subscription ticket kind of thing. So you bought this Reisekort yesterday, and you haven't had a chance to try it out yet. So you don't really know how that shit works, right? So you run down the stairs to catch the metro. The metro is rolling up. As you get down there, you don't want to be late because Granny, she'll be really disappointed if you're late, right? You don't want to do that. You realize that like you don't want to get fined and you want to go on the metro, so you have to check in real fast. So that's your context right there. Something that the user can relate to. And then the actual task is to have the user check in less than 20 seconds. So context and task. Now that was a context and task for like a physical experience. But of course you can translate that into whatever you want to test on the digital interface. So why this task-based testing? So when someone shows you something and explains the whole thing for you, you understand it. And my bet is that, or my experience tells me that very few people will tell you if they don't understand it after you explained it. They'll just sit there and be quiet, right? So when you coming back to this Reisekort from before, right? When you go in and check in with your Reisekort for the first time, nobody's there to help you, right? The experiences that we design, they have to be intuitive. Like we want to make sure that we build something that makes sense to the user without that depending on us being there to hold their hands and explain it to them. So, okay. So I just want to quickly go over some of like the major differences in these two approaches here. So on one hand, we have the let me tell you how this works approach. This one, it studies opinion, as I said before, more than anything else. And on the other hand, we have the can you tell me how this works approach. And this could be task-based testing, could also be other methods, right? And this one studies use in context. So when you present something to a user and they have to give you feedback afterwards, you may already have explained something that they would have questions about if you'd just given them the prototype. So you don't get to uncover that if you explain everything first, right? You just get to hear their opinion about your explanation rather than see how they would interact with it. And also, I think it's a pretty well-known fact that what users say and do is just not the same thing, right? So maybe you could also imagine their feedback being slightly biased, whether they like you or not. Did they like your explanation or not, right? It may not be, their feedback may not be related directly to the actual thing you talked about. They may just think that you're super obnoxious. Hopefully not. So another thing is that when you do the talking, you miss out on some important insights, and that would be something like, what is their language like? Like, is there a term they use that you could use in your product, which would make more sense to them than whatever term you came up with? Also, it could be something like, what do they focus on first? What seems mostly important to them? Did you emphasize the right thing in the UI, stuff like that? And also, it probably, when you present something, they won't be as engaged in your session as when they have to be active themselves, like, right? I don't know if like, when I listen to people talk, at least, and I realize this is what I'm doing now. I'm talking, you guys are listening, and what I'm going to say now is that, like, my mind starts drifting. So I hope you're still out there. I hope you're still with me. Do we still have people on the call, Tina? Did I scare them off?
We do, and everybody's still on board. So
nice.
That's great.
Whew. I hope you're listening, guys out there. I'm so much looking forward to the questions. Okay. Yeah, people's minds tend to drift, and this is extremely important, especially during virtual sessions like this one. So have some interactivity. Also, another thing is that when it's the user, so them doing the talking, you free up some of your own cognitive capacity to, for example, study their facial expressions, or think about what in-depth questions you want, follow-up questions you want to ask when they're done doing what they're doing right now, and stuff like that. And then also is that when you let them interact with the prototype, you get some usability insights at the same time. So that's pretty nice too, real like usability, right? Okay, so now I guess that I put this task-based testing in enough of a context. So that was a bit about picking your method, if you could only pick one method, and because you're in a hurry, right? The next thing, and now I wrote interview test guide here. Tina made me aware that what I'm going to talk about here is actually not an interview guide. So you see, I'm not academic. I just call it an interview guide, and then actually it's an interview guide with a lot of other stuff in there too. So interview test guide, script, whatever you want to call it. Okay, but this is the part about getting ready to actually run your session. So more like the practicalities of it. And this is not where you want to save time. As I said before, the insights you produce when running feedback sessions will be very dependent on your preparation. So you want to do this properly. Of course, you want to recruit too. You want to start the recruitment early on, but recruitment is a topic on its own. So I'm not going to go into that thing here. And you can easily Google, like, what is this interview guide thingy, if you want that. But this expanded version that I'm going to show you includes this task-based testing method. And the key thing for me is that you build a frame for what you want to know in your team. Again, not something you do on your own as a UXer. Lots of other people in your company will have hypotheses and questions they don't know the answer to, and you might as well help them get that. So again, key thing for me here is that you build this frame in your team, and you define your questions you need to be able to answer after you're done user testing, that you define those together. And also that you remember to define what success looks like, right? If you're gonna ask, you're gonna have them test the flow, and then you're gonna ask, how easy do you think this was? Then you need to define upfront what should the average score be in order for you to progress and not iterate further on that thing. So actually, I just wanted to break down this thing in a very practical way for you. So here you have some small checkboxes, right? And the first thing you want to do when the user comes in is that you want to have an introduction, right? And the main purpose here is to make the respondent feel comfortable in the situation. need to let them know why they're there. What is their role? What is your role? Explain that they can't make any mistakes. It's not them being tested. You know, what I'll often say is that it's not you being tested, it's actually me and my work. And if they make any mistakes, then exactly that's the, well, damn, they can't make any mistakes, right? So you can't say if you make any mistakes. You have to tell them, like, you can't make any mistakes here. If there's something that's confusing, annoying, you don't know what to do, you don't know how to solve the task, then that's exactly the kind of feedback that I'm looking for here. So make them feel comfortable and understand that their role is to help you improve the product. So they're there to help. They're basically a specialist, right? So that's a bit of a warm up, but then after that, you may want to start out with some open questions. So the overall goal of that, for me at least, would be to get them talking. It can be a bit difficult if you go directly into task-based testing to first get them talking there. So you sort of need them to open up beforehand. Maybe there is some specific thing you want to ask them, like maybe you want to get their mental model of something, or have them explain what their problem connected to some specific situation is. And you definitely want to ask these questions before showing them the prototype. Otherwise, they'll be completely biased by what they see, right? So you want to get that before you show them anything. And then once you've covered these questions, then you can start your actual test. Then hopefully they feel comfortable in the situation, and they are warmed up to talk a lot, because now it's sort of like them who has to shine, right? So you know what this task-based testing is, and it could be some other method in here, right? And now you have to turn these tasks that you're going to write. They have to come from your hypothesis to be turned into actual insights after the sessions. So when you do write these tasks and you have to select what tasks to bring in there, I recommend that you focus where there is the most business impact for you, and where you're the most insecure about whether you have the right solution or not. So that should be the focus area when you do write your tasks. And then also you have to consider how you're asking a question and if your context is something real that they can relate to. If you come up with some crazy context that they don't even get it, then your results will be very impacted by that. Also, be neutral and be natural in your language. You don't want to give away any cues, but you don't want to make the task too hard just to make it hard. So it's a very difficult balance. And actually, I think for me, writing these tasks, I think that's probably the most difficult part about my job. Also, you want to ask them to think aloud, and this can be very unnatural to people. But ask them to just let you know whatever they see, like what are they looking for, what do they expect when they click some specific button, what do they expect to happen? Is there a word they don't quite understand, a color they don't like, whatever? Just tell them to let loose, right? And also warn them that you will probably ask questions along the way, and it's just because you want to learn from them, not because they're doing something wrong. And the reason you want to tell them this up front is because they will forget to think out loud. And then when you ask them, they'll tend to stop and think that they made some sort of mistake and they're going in the wrong direction or something like that. Yeah. Also, as I said before, you have to remember to define the success thing up front. You'll definitely compromise with your standards when you see the results if you didn't have this conversation beforehand. And again, remember, defining success, that's something you do as a team. And you need to consider what's important for a specific task. If it's super important that a flow can be completed in 3 minutes or 20 seconds, as before with the Reisekorte, then you measure time on task for success, right? And then you define up front that those 20 seconds is the success criteria for passing the task. Maybe you want to measure how easy a task was to solve, or maybe how relevant they think a certain flow is for their daily work. there could be so many choices on how you want to measure. Yeah. So last menu on the item here is debrief. You need to give them a chance to follow up on anything they wanted to add during the test or something they wanted to ask you. And then it's always good hygiene, I think, to collect feedback on the session. Like I always ask my respondents what the session was like for them, what it was like to participate. And you can even afterwards send out a survey if you want to do something more anonymous. And maybe depending on how close you are with your user group, you can let them in on what the process is going to look like from here on. So, and then just the final note is that I always run dry sessions on colleagues, sort of practicing before actual user testing with customers. And the reason for that is that I find that I get to see some very basic mistakes that I made. It's embarrassing, but they're always there, right? So it can be anything from like hotspots missing in the prototype. It can be a task. It makes perfect sense for me because I wrote it, but nobody else is able to understand what the heck I'm looking for, right? And a lot of other stuff. And you want to sort of like catch those, I don't know, kitty diseases before going into the actual user session. And also another funny thing is that over time, you'll be able to sort of show the difference between getting internal feedback and getting customer feedback. And that's a very interesting thing. So, but again, that's a topic entirely on its own. So, yeah. Okay. So once you've done this, then boom, you're ready to go, right? So, do you know what my favorite day is? I guess I mean, probably you can guess it, right? Because I wrote it right here on the slide. So it's user testing day. Oh my God, I love it. And I think it's like a UXer's secret birthday. You know, you do all the planning, you prepare all the food, you put up the decorations, you get your outfit ready, and you're tired as shit before it even begins, right? But then magically, when the guests appear, you're filled with energy. You have a great party. Everything's good, and then the next day your head, it feels like it's gonna explode and you have no idea like what really happened yesterday, and it takes some time to recover. So that's what user testing is like for me anyways, but it seriously is the best part about being a UXer in my world anyways. So you know, just to see that thing that you and your team built in the hands of the people who's supposed to use it, and it's supposed to solve problems for them. Like, will they intuitively understand how to use it? Will it fit well into their workflow? Will it solve the problem it was intended to solve? And will it create any new problems? You know, we can get into that too. So I think that's like that's so interesting. And so from my point of view, and I mean, of course I have to say this, otherwise I would be out of a job, right? I don't want that. The only way to check these things is through early testing with users. So bringing them on board, bringing them into the development process very early. Again, not so costly for the company as many companies think. And if I can only do one thing, if I can only select one method, and often it's like that's the time you have, right? Then task-based testing, I think I said it enough times, right? On prototypes in an environment fitted for both qualitative and quantitative research. So that's something new. I'll get back to that in a second. But then also remember to focus on your script to make the most of the time you have with users. Often I schedule for an hour. It's never enough, but it's sort of like that's the time that you can reasonably ask for. Okay, so user testing, awesome day for the UXer. User testing, also a very fatiguing day for the UXer. So the reason I say it's fatiguing is that oh my God, you have to remember your interview guide or your interview test guide or script or whatever we're going to call it. So these questions you're looking to answer, you have to keep track of time. You have to bite your tongue to not tell them what they're supposed to do when they get stuck in the prototype. You have to take notes, and you don't want to be too obvious about taking notes, right? Because then you'll just distract them, and you'll create insecurities like, what is she writing there? Is it something bad about me? Did they do something wrong? Then you have to register where they clicked when they said that thing. What did their facial expression even look like at the same time? Did they look frustrated or happy, or what was going on? And then at the same time as doing this, you have to be present, right? Again, creating an environment they feel comfortable in. You have to listen, like really listen to what they're saying, and at the same time, as you have to remember all these things, you need to sort of like think ahead. Okay, that thing that you just said, maybe you want to ask a follow-up question, but you don't want to do it right now, because right now they're doing something. You don't want to interrupt them because you want to see what they're doing, so you have to ask that question afterwards. And it's just like, right? But it is really funny. It is really funny. I promise, if you haven't done a user test before, it's awesome. But we definitely want to lighten that burden on ourselves, right? And how can we do that without compromising the quality of our data? I spent quite some years mixing different methods and trying to see how I could hack this. And what I've come up with is this hybrid version. So on one hand here, we have the fully moderated session, which is what you can, I mean, if you Google, then this is what you can find. I don't think you can find anything about this hybrid thingy. If you can, if you know, if it has a name, please let me know. I would love to see that. But this fully moderated session, it requires a whole lot from you. And then on the other hand, we have a hybrid version, which is my go-to method. So for this hybrid version, I invite customers in for in-person sessions when that's possible. I work across borders, so often it'll be virtual, right? But we talk, I look them in the eyes, I make sure they feel comfortable, or at least I hope they feel comfortable in the setting. And then I hand them over the computer, and I just ask them to follow the instructions in Preely. So I use Preely, that's the data is collected automatically. I use Preely as a platform here. And so the instructions that would be your task-based tests. It could also be other questions not related to a prototype. So I just ask them to do whatever the screen says while I observe. And again, I ask them to think aloud, right? While solving their tasks. And then once they complete their tasks, they can provide feedback directly in Preely. And of course, we can have a conversation next to them giving feedback there, whatever input they have. But the nice thing here is that afterwards, I don't even have to calculate average scores. And if you ask my colleague about what I'm bad at, I'm pretty sure they would say math, right? My brain, it just freezes up whenever I have to do like simple math. And that's not a good thing when you work with statistics, right? So the platform, it does that for me. I'm very thrilled about that. And also it keeps track of where people clicks, the sequence of their clicks, how much time they spend on a task, and a bunch of other stuff that I don't have to worry about while I'm in the situation. And another bonus is that while I don't have to remember all the task descriptions, I think that having them reading the descriptions themselves instead of me presenting them, I think that actually removes some bias. That means that every participant I get in, they get the exact same question. So I know that I'll adapt my communication. If I present a task and the user looks just slightly confused when I ask them to do something, then I'll adapt, right? And being such a nice person as I am, I might end up helping them actually, right? And we don't want to do that. We don't want to influence the data that we produce. I mean, of course, if they're stuck, they need help, right? Yeah, that aspect of freeing up some of your own cognitive capacity, so you don't have to manage as much in a fully moderated session, actually means that I can run more sessions in a day during this hybrid version than I can on the fully moderated one. And it comes with other bonuses too. One of them being that you can quite easily reuse the same project to run some unmoderated testing, where you can get a lot more answers quite fast, right? You won't get as much qualitative in there, but quantitative data is good. It's nice too, right? This session that I just talked about, I ran it with 5 colleagues in ZeroNorth. It reiterated a bit on the script and on the prototype, and then I ran the session with 8 customers. And now user testing was completed, right? I did that part, and I was synthesizing data was on the menu. So this is coming back to the party analogy. This is the day after the party. And this is always the point where like I'm not really sure of what I'm doing, like at all. I'm not able to see the forest for the trees. I start having doubts, like, am I the right person for this job? Should I just, you know, go work in a clothing store or something like that? And this is even after my years in the game, right? But I've accepted that this is a part of the process. It's only natural when you work with something that's very complex, and people are quite complex, right? And I just tried to remind myself that on the other side of all that fuzziness, there is something that makes sense, right? Whether that be that we made a lot of mistakes and we could just throw out our solutions and start all over, or that we went down the right path. So you have to trust the process. It's like this every time, and you will get there. And then also to remember that if you took a wrong direction, and you find out that like you have to throw everything to the trash, then that's an answer too, right? And it's an answer that brings you even closer to the right situation. And just thank God you didn't let that monster into production, right? So good thing that you did test early before you spend a lot of like developer resources to write code. Yeah. So that's where I'm at right now in the process. I've synthesized my data. The results, they were quite positive this time in terms of the fit of user needs and what we built. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start focus on more details based on the feedback that we got. So in other cases, we could have risked having to run more iterations before getting to that point. And that's just how it is with these things. Like you can't, it's a difficult thing to plan because you never know what's going to happen. And I think if someone did know what's going to happen, then we would be out of our jobs, right? Yeah. And also when you do synthesize and get ready to share your findings with the team, I think it's important to be very transparent in the connection between your insights and the design. So you don't just go and show the design to your team and to the company. You represent the user, nobody else. That's your job, right? So you can't hide your insights behind the UI. You have to let them know the story, right? People have to know the why behind why the product is designed the way it is. Yeah, so that's it. I'm on time, Tina, right?
You are. We have time for questions as well.
Wow,
that's great.
Oh, that's good timing.
Definitely. Thank you for your talk, Sif.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I hope people are still there.
They are, and I think from my perspective, it's also so refreshing to hear the frustrations, because I have the same feeling sometimes where I'm just like, okay, I'm going to be a painter instead. I'll not conduct user research anymore. It's too frustrating. It's just like, you know, all these things. So that was also nice to hear. And I think it's so nice to hear the whole idea of having a strategy for user testing. So instead of always having the default think aloud protocol where you have the full-blown, where you don't have a platform like Preely conducting some of the stuff, it's just nice to hear that other approaches are also working.
Yeah, they definitely are. Yeah.
So that's great. We have some questions coming in. Anya, she is asking, how would you use the "can you tell me how this work" approach in a remote unmoderated session without video/voice recording?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. So I always ask my participants if I can record the session, and they always say yes. So I don't know what environment we wouldn't have any video or audio. Is that, did I get it wrong? Is it just that you can't record, or?
I think maybe Anya is like referring more to like a platform as Preely, where you don't have this. If you conduct a fully blown unmoderated remote user testing, then you, of course, you will not have those things in. And
No.
I'll say that we have some guidelines lying in our academy right now, where we actually have some tips and tricks to plugins you can use together with Preely, so you can actually have these things as well. But on the other hand, like, there's also a beauty in not having all of this material lying, because like then you need to conduct the analysis as well, and the analysis of video and audio recording are the things that takes time. So you should definitely do it with care. And I will also say, like, my experience is that if it's important, and sometimes it is important to do these things, then I'll definitely recommend maybe set up a more traditional user session where you are together with people, so you can also have all the surroundings and all of these things included in the test session.
Yeah, you know, it's extremely important to consider where you are in the process, right? And what method and what setup is right for the answers you're looking for. Like, are you doing something that's very business critical? Then you may want to go more full blown, right? And have your moderated sessions and your unmoderated sessions to both get the very qualitative, but also to get the width there, right? And if it's something where it's not as important, then you can go with a more of a hybrid setup, right?
Exactly. And also what we recommend is like having, like, for instance, using Preely as something in between. So instead of having these very big full-blown user tests, and then you maybe conduct them like once or twice a year, then still do that, but then like make sure that you're on track with everything else by, for instance, using a platform as ours for it. So that's definitely something that we can recommend. Then I can see, I think this is more common, but there's a person that has written that you also have the opportunity, of course, to present written tasks in a moderated test. And that's, of course, right. You have the opportunity of just, instead of asking them to do stuff, you can just slide a piece of paper and then make them do it like that. So that can, of course, control some of the biases. Moderator.
Yeah, that's very true.
Exactly. Then
it's always good to get practical, right?
Yeah, exactly. And especially the bias, because especially also if you have two moderators. So if you're taking turns, because I actually, like, I'm also teaching in UX, right? And I was actually like preaching this yesterday, saying that, okay, you know, this is, if you have two moderators, you need to be aware what you're doing, because sometimes I'm also a nice person, as you said. So I go in, and when they struggle, I let them struggle for 2 minutes. And then if they can't do it, then I'll say, okay, you need to do like this and this. And then others will like have them sit there for 5 minutes. And if especially you're working with quantitative data, it will screw everything. So it's very important that you keep these things constant. Yeah. So Steph is asking, thanks for sharing your experiences, Sif. Do you have experience with and tips and tricks to testing UX writing? If so, is it a separate project or something you do within the design?
Yeah, okay. So I think I said before that I think writing tasks is like, that's the most difficult part about my job, right? I also hear an echo of myself telling my boss and my colleagues, like, UX writing, like communication, that's not my thing. I think it's so difficult, right? But I was at my time in, so before I went into shipping, I was in telco. I was in New Day for some years, and there I was so fortunate to be a part of a team where we actually had a communication specialist who morphed into UX writing, and we actually ran some experiences with testing, actually sort of, and I say sort of, right? Underline the sort of, testing, A/B testing, different texts. So we did that, and we did that in Preely. We had a customer panel. I don't know if any of you on the call saw the previous talk by Emilia and embarrassing. Emilia and the other nice lady, Maya. Sorry, Maya. On this customer panel. So that is something that we did have in New Day. So we had a lot of people that we could send something out to, right? So we made an A version and a B version Not to say that one was better than the other, but we were really insecure, like how that would affect. And that was the only difference. And then we sent out one thing to one group and the other thing to another group, and we could actually see that there was a difference. So we tested it out that way. I have no idea if I answered the question. I forgot what the question was now.
But I think so. It was about the UX writing, and what we see actually often with our customers is they use Preely and then conduct an A/B test with the different content and so on. So that's definitely something that is usable. I think one thing they should be quite aware of is that if you test too many variables at once, then there can be some issues, of course. So you should be very aware of that, of course.
Exactly.
So that's always.
I completely agree on that.
Yeah. So Peter is asking, sometimes parties go wrong. Do you have examples and how to avoid this? I like it.
Yeah. Sometimes parties, they do go wrong. I'm trying to think, like, do I have any good war stories on user sessions going wrong, right? I forget all the bad stuff.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I said before, preparation really is key. It is super uncomfortable to sit there in a session with a user and you don't know your shit. Like, you don't know what's going to happen next. You can't control time, or I don't know, somehow you accidentally step on someone's toe. So I would say preparation really is key. I don't know what kind of I would like to hear some examples of sometimes parties can go wrong.
I have actually tried it. So I have worked a lot with speakers, right? And then we said, like, very big user tests and so on. It's not the hybrid stuff though, but where we go out and test different things. And then, for instance, if connectivity doesn't work, then it's the kind of so the things that we actually want to test on, then it's something else is coloring the results in the negative way, right? So there's especially something about, like, especially the different variables you're testing with, but also the different, like, if it's actually having internal validity, the study you're conducting. So are you actually testing what you think you are testing? And I think from this, if you're running things unmoderated and remote, you should be aware that, for instance, if they have a bad internet connection, that could affect the results so much, and you might not be aware of that, and also task on time and success rate and so on. So there's definitely some stuff there that you need to be aware of, but it's a lot about validity in general of the study design, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, but
it is, again, this preparation. Think about, what do you want to get out of this thing before you go into it, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
We have another one. This setup works so well on online meetings. What about offline meetings? How would the approach change in offline meetings?
Yeah, so I actually started with this hybrid thing before all this COVID came about, right? So as I said, I've been dabbling with it for some years, and in New Day we have this customer experience lab, quite cool, set up with like a room out back where you could have the team, and then this CSI kind of mirror thing where they could look through it, and the customer, they couldn't see your team behind the screen, and microphones and all this stuff. But again, here my issue was that actually it was quite rare that I could bring in the team, and the reason for having the team out back was that so they could do notes, right? And I wouldn't have a second moderator sitting next to me and doing all these notes. So I wanted to free up some cognitive space for myself, right? So that's where I started. And what I would do prior to using Preely is, I mean, I would have my prototype in Vision or something like that, right? Or in Figma. And then I would still give them the computer, and then I would read out loud the tasks. So the only difference there really is that they read the tasks themselves and they get to give feedback directly here in a platform. So it's like, I think the transition was quite easy. The only, like, the thing to be aware of is that, so using a platform like Preely, the user may not know it, and how do I navigate it, and like, what is this UI? So what I did is that I built like a tiny mock project in Preely, and then I just show them up front, like, this is kind of what you're going to go through, and okay, then they know what's going to happen. They know they're going to be asked for feedback and stuff like that. So that's that makes it a lot easier on the respondent.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. I think time is up. I know that you have another meeting at exactly 10 o'clock, so I think we need to wrap up now, but I think this is so interesting, and I know that we can be talking about these things for forever, so I love that. So I think I will wrap up now. Thank you everybody for joining, and thank you for a very inspiring talk, Sif. Again, if you have questions for Preely, like you have also you use Preely and have good success with that, but if you are curious about what we can help you with, please reach out, and then we'll see what we can do. And then we also hope that we're going to see you in May, where we have our next meetup, and this is going to be about desired experiences, user research, and which metrics that are suitable to measure during this work. So that's going to be interesting. It's Marty Gage, that is Vice President of Design Research at Lextent, who are joining us. And he's also just released a book about user research as well. So we are trying to dig in like all these things that we should be good at when we work with the user experience design. And again, we are sending out the material from today. We have a recording of the session. We are also getting Sif's slides as well. So we will include that in the email. And then I think that was it. And I hope that everybody will have a great day. So thank you for now. Thank you for joining, and see you hopefully next month. Bye bye.
I'm coming. Thank you.
That sounds great.
Bye.
Bye bye.